Thanks so much for having me here. It's amazing to be here with you guys in Tel Aviv. Um, my name is Anrick. I'm a founder and an immersive director. I started a studio recently because I think immersive technologies is doing so much more than just storytelling. It's going to change the world around us, and I hope that that's going to be a change for good. Studio is called Studio Anricks. It's clearly my practice, my sort of space to explore. And I've been focusing on new forms of storytelling or interactive storytelling for 15 plus years, and have spent the last 5 years diving deeper into spatial computing and AI forms of storytelling. Worked for all kinds of different organizations and brands, a real mix of commercial commissions, collaborations with organizations like The Guardian, World Building Institute, Shakespeare Society, a couple of really brief glimpses into the work that I normally do outside of augmented reality, because the range of the types of works that I get involved with is quite broad. Sea Prayer is a tilt brush-based story that we built at The Guardian, collaborating with the team at Google, and it's about the war in Syria. And most importantly, it's a personal story written by Khaled Hosseini about the idea of leaving his son behind. So not so much about the politics, but the personal stories. The Party is an autism-focused narrative, allowing people to explore what autism and what hypersensitivity in autism really means. It's a 360 film, again, with the Guardian and Cambridge, came out a couple of years ago. Rook is a personal fairy tale I worked on with a studio called Roll Studio in London and Google. Most Northern Place is much older, web documentary. I've been in the web space for as long as I can remember, Flash being my formative piece of software from a coding and a visual perspective, graduating gradually to WebGL and so forth and so on. Some of you here may remember that time. Most Northern Place is a web documentary about northern Greenland, still alive today. But I'm here to talk to you about Snapchat. I'm an official lens creator and a creative partner at Snapchat's Lens Studio arm, let's say. And obviously, you guys may have potentially seen the most famous hot dog in the world, which I think did so much to kick off the sense that this piece of technology, however lighthearted, could really make an impact. What you really get when you start looking at the numbers, and I won't dive too deep into all of this stuff, but is actually pretty extraordinary, and I think this is probably by now fairly outdated and an underestimation of the kind of engagement that augmented reality in Snapchat can give you access to. Why is Snapchat powerful for me? I mean, I worked with projects that deal with fairly serious topics, or at least on the more serious side. Snapchat became powerful, Lens Studio became powerful. Because if you think about Snapchat as something that, as a tool that allows you to communicate through the camera, and if you think about augmented reality as something that puts a layer in between you and that camera, adds a layer to what the camera sees. And then if you think about the audience on Snapchat, which is increasingly using that piece of software like most people use a keyboard to send a message. Instead of typing, you send a message. Those three things are very, very powerful from a communications perspective. And then in terms of a practical point of view, why is Lens Studio as a piece of software powerful for me? Well, it creates the daily habit of augmented reality without people really even realize it. Millions of people, actually billions of people by now, have casually tried augmented reality, not even really realizing what they are doing. Daily habits form our future industries and communication processes and thought and mind state of mind. Also, you have access to a massive distribution network and a huge audience for free. The ability to reach millions of people when really you're just making a joke is pretty extraordinary for somebody who doesn't have that platform. We're seeing this more and more in all kinds of different platforms, and Lens Studio is a part of that. and it is accessible to a degree across the world. In other words, across the world, there are smartphones and Snapchat's Lens Studio, like other platforms such as Spark, solve the challenge of scalable AR for you. You build something, it works on every phone that is of the last 5 or 6 or 7 years. So there's a lot of phones in the world that will play your content. And beyond your phone, it works on Google Hangouts, it works on Twitch, it works on Skype with the extra piece of software, Snap Camera. So everything that you publish through Lens Studio actually becomes available in Snapchat as an app within about 5-10 minutes, as well as outside of it. What is an official lens creator? Official lens creators are the community people that are most active using Lens Studio. They're just people that have downloaded the software for free, played with it, started with something, an idea, applied to join the team at the website for Lens Studio, and became a part of this community. We're in touch every single day. Some people are massive, have a huge platform, others are just experimenting, others are professionals who have a day job and just help out. It's not paid, but you get a lot of support from Snapchat itself, from the team that actually builds Lens Studio, who will reply to your actual messages every single day. 125 people right now, about 25 countries. You get access to the early Lens Studio beta, so very early versions of new pieces of software, new layers of that software are available to you. Competitions to participate in, different seasonal events, introductions to brands to get paid for your skills. We need more OLCs. We need a more diverse range of OLCs. Go download and join. Every year, this happened a couple of weeks ago, there's an event in Los Angeles. Snapchat flies everybody out for a 2-day event to celebrate the community of creators who do this just for fun. Diving a bit more into Lens Studio as a piece of software. So just to hijack a little bit, as I said, this is going to be kind of casual and messy. You make something in the software, and then you publish it in about 10 minutes, 5 minutes, sometimes 30 seconds, sometimes half an hour. You have an email with a snap code. That snap code is live on Snapchat. Snapchat post-moderates, which means if you do something inappropriate, if there's something in there that's commercially owned by somebody else, it'll get taken down later. Within about 5 to 10 minutes, let's say on average, you have something that anybody in the world can open up using the code. And these are all community-created lenses, which then get brought into Snapchat's ecosystem, promoted inside of the app to gain an audience, or which lead to collaborations with the Lens Studio team themselves. This is the opening page of Lens Studio. I don't know now if this is the latest version. One of the really powerful things of Lens Studio is, which makes it so easy to get started, apart from it being free and available for Mac and PC, is that you start with these templates, which are fully functioning, fully built versions of the type of lenses you can make. You can open any of those, pick them apart, take layers out, literally replace a visual asset such as a JPEG or a PNG file, and have a new version of that lens. Or just learn from how it's built and understand the way that it's put together. So these are fully formed, fully editable, and fully deconstructible templates. This is the actual view of Lens Studio when you have a file open. This one I was working on just yesterday. I'm going to go and show you guys a little bit more in a second. I'll actually open the software, I think we'll be okay for time. I'm looking at that clock over here below me, counting down. And then more importantly, you have a really extensive range of tutorials on YouTube that allow you to go further and really learn step by step, as well as actual web-based tutorials for you to just understand something a bit more deep or do something that you haven't done before. Pretty extensive range of work. So there are different types of lenses. Obviously, there are 4 types really: face-based, world-based, image marker-based, and landmark-based lenses. I'll show you a few favorites that I have, including some of my own. The hair color changer on the left, actually also made by the same guy who made the disappear lens on the right, Ginny DeWoo, who's based in Australia. And then the voice reactive lens in the middle. Here's a few experiments of my own Mondrian face, which is a great example of a template, actually. It's just 2D assets, it's just really JPEGs that I used from the template. I've replaced assets in the template and created that Mondrian version of your face. Bubble is the first ever lens I made. It represents social anxiety, to me anyway. And then a Peaky Blinders lens, if you guys know that show. This guy, J.P. Peary, is amazing. He's based in London. He's a full-time UX designer, and he sometimes makes up to 10 lenses a day. He's made 1,400, and they're really good. I mean, this is pretty hardcore stuff. He just loves this stuff. Awesome guy. Moss face. This was really funny because I started to make a kind of swamp creature idea. And it turned out to be something which celebrates sort of like nature, but like on your face. And so it was a little bit surprising, but it somehow seems to have really caught people's imagination. Image tracking here on the left is really, really impressive work. All of that technology is obviously simply available out of the box. You upload an image, a JPEG of what you want tracked, and the moment that the camera sees it, it puts your 3D model on top of that. You don't have to do any coding to make it work that way. You need to get the assets from somewhere, but beyond that stuff, it's all out of the box. And then code-based work on the right. There's loads of interesting stuff happening in this space, just color filters or ways that you can edit the world and what you see, and I really find that an interesting space. This is a project I did some time ago in anticipation of what currently happens to be very trendy. This is about a year ago, a year and a few weeks now. Death Stranding robotic arm that looks over your shoulders, double segmentation, which means it's in front of you and behind you at the same time. It's tracked and then offset from the eyes, so wherever I move my head, it's moving with me. 2 different animations that could happen either separately or concurrently. Open your mouth and open your eyes, or like raise your eyebrows. Those 2 things could happen at the same time or separately. An earthquake lens on the left, which is super interesting as a slightly more serious. I'm not sure if it was intended that way, but as something that raises a little bit more of an interesting, serious element. This portal, which from the center is, I forget the company name now, but it was built in Australia by his company that's, in Darwin, and it's just gone everywhere. And I think the space of volumetric is also super interesting. I don't have too much time to dive into it today, but really interesting stuff. And then you have the whole landmark lenses. This is Inez Alpha, or Inez Marzat, who is amazing. I'll talk about her in a second, a little bit more. Or Clara Buck, who I think a lot of artists that work with Lens Studio or artists already have created work previously outside of that ecosystem and are bringing that into the Lens Studio ecosystem. So Clara's work is incredible, and then she's bringing that style into Lens Studio, and this is tracked onto Buckingham Palace in London. This is an image marker lens with a fairly extraordinary level of finish by Fisherman Labs for Nike. And Paper Triangles is another company to look at if you guys are interested in more amazing Lens Studio work. They work a lot with Snap Originals, so content that then extends out into lenses as part of the process of swiping through the content, you end up on a lens. This is for Van Life. Beautiful photogrammetry work. Really, really impressive optimizing. I worked together with Beach House Group to make a makeup lens for Millie Bobby Brown. I don't know very much about makeup. personally, but I found it very interesting to explore, firstly, how UI works in that context, and then secondly, how to create a natural version that fits with many different skin types and works in many different lighting conditions. So it was a really interesting project to work on. I had a larger team, it wasn't just myself. So, creating that kind of setup here on the right, you can see it, was super interesting. I'll show you guys really quickly what it looks like. 15 minutes. I was hoping I'd be kind of here now, so this is good. Firstly, the bubble face lens, which I showed you a second ago, is actually just like a kind of like a hacked, modified particle system. So there are many, many, many bubbles. I just anchored one to my face, really. And as you can see, like it's live. Right? So you can kind of always see what you're doing, and every change you make is instantly visible. This is a project I launched just last week for the Charlie's Angels films. I'll turn my face off because it's a bit awkward, but you have a lot of previews here, so you can just use preview videos or preview images, and all the different facial expressions are present, even pets included. That's a Charlie's Angels film collaboration with Sony Studios, Sony Pictures. And here on the left, you can see you have this scene. So this is everything that's visible. If I start playing with these layers here, you'll start seeing all the different settings popping up in the middle. Everything's really just parameters or boxes or basic settings. So this is the area that has everything that's visible, and here is everything that's your source. So there may be many more things in here. I just haven't maybe applied them, or they're not visible because they're part of the source layers that make these 3D elements happen, for example. And that's basically your scene. You've got the ability here to go in and manually adjust stuff if you wanted to. You can basically play around with stuff as you want to. So deeper stories with Lens Studio, or just generally speaking with augmented reality, because it's an interesting topic. How do you make this meaningful, or how do you make this do something that helps the broader dialogue around topical issues in the news, or how do we make interactive stories, which is actually really where I've come from and what I'm interested in. Interactive stories with research have shown to improve memory and recall, have built context or created empathy around particular subjects, have encouraged action in people in ways that linear films haven't. The fact that you're asked to engage, or that you're somehow involved, creates quite a powerful reaction in people. I'm working on a project using Lens Studio, which is a sci-fi puzzling game. It's really climate change themed, but very loosely. These puzzles, I don't have too much time to show you guys in detail, but these objects are puzzles. They require a particular combination to open up, and inside of them is another puzzle and another puzzle. And if you get deep enough and you solve the combination of touches and rotations and walking around, and you then get messages from the future about climate change from this girl called Faye. Gray Matter AR, and I'm going to start rushing a little bit, guys, I'm sorry, because time is tight, is an amazing project by Karen van der Borgt. She's a Dutch artist living in Toronto. Gray Matter AR is just one of the most amazing things I've seen in a long time. Her idea was the generational gap, technology-wise, is worse than it is in real life. How do we get different generations to communicate more? Her idea was, let's bring senior citizens into the space where teenagers are, which is Snapchat. And so she created 50 lenses featuring senior citizens thinking out loud about their life and their advice, but not just in a sort of linear video way, like, well, you should really do what you love, in a really crazy, insane, beautifully artistic way, using Lens Studio to create these fantastically experimental pieces of face art is what I would call it. Really, really nice.
Hi, my name is Jennifer. I'm going to show you how homeless people live here in Echo Park. And we're going to look around at my tent today. So welcome.
This is a really beautiful, simple project, photogrammetry of a tent of a homeless person in Los Angeles with a voice track that allows you to understand how Angela lives and what her challenges are every day. It's available on Snapchat, really impressive work. Just technically, if you know photogrammetry and optimizing, to fit everything into 4 megabytes is not nothing. But also substantially, it's an interesting piece of work, I think. And then another one from myself. I saw this on Twitter, and I was like, wow, that's cool. That's probably 1638. That's one of the last known sketches of a dodo. That's a sketch by a Dutch artist who at that time was traveling for whatever reason. And I thought, wow, it'd be amazing to see that move. Like that dodo was moving and alive at that time. And so that's exactly what we created. Very, very simple, really. Just create some depth and then stretch the sketch around it. You can kind of imagine for the first time since 1638 what that dodo was doing. Maybe before they had it for dinner, I don't know for sure. Going a bit further, depth and machine learning is beginning to make its way into both Snapchat and then more interestingly, Lens Studio. You know, I can't go too deep into all this stuff, but if you think about depth and geometry, currently a lot of AR, and that includes Snapchat, is just a 3D object positioned in front of everything that you see through the camera. And so when something real moves closer, moves past you, that is closer than the 3D objects would be, magic is broken. The illusion is gone. But depth is actually beginning to work its way into what Lens Studio can offer augmented reality creators. And that's why, for example, on the right there, on that HBO show, HBO? Of course, Game of Thrones. You know, you see the actual creature on the real building, and it is occluded. It is hidden behind the building. And it's just simple, but another layer of magic that makes augmented reality feel real. And then on the left, you have Brendan, one of the official lens creators, experimenting. This is just an experiment. But again, it shows you the power of reality when you combine these two different layers. Depth is one part of the narrative. It's what powers, for example, the landmarks. It understands what a landmark is. It has a sense of depth. To understand a landmark, you also have to know what you're looking at, like if it's the Eiffel Tower, for example, or Buckingham Palace. So a little bit like in Death Stranding, this AI, this machine looking over my shoulder at the world has information that I don't have. And it's helping me. Snapchat's camera is becoming that kind of eye, just not quite as creepy. So simpler stuff is recognizing a shoe and being able to give you the Amazon page. That's very practically and commercially focused, but the fact that Snapchat's camera is able to do that means that as a creator, I can start making all kinds of other stuff, that I can attach machine learning to my work at some point in the near future. Using Lens Studio in some way is super unbelievably exciting. And what you then can create, if you think creatively, if you think the camera's looking at the world with you, is things like the gender swap, which is sort of like the hot dog part 2. Like, it was just so big and just so everywhere. It really created a sense that something new was happening. And that this is being processed on a phone's processor is unbelievable. Where does all of this crazy stuff go? I have 5 minutes and a few thoughts. I may be wrong. If AR becomes a part of reality, slowly, gradually, as you play with it casually, as it's just fun, and hey, it's something I download onto my phone and put on WhatsApp, and then suddenly my family is seeing me with all these funny face filters, and so now it's part of their reality. Slowly, AR becomes reality. In other words, it becomes a part of reality. It's what we expect. and it becomes a permanent part of what you use to communicate. More people send videos with lenses than not on Snapchat. No one has the same reality anymore at that point. This is fascinating, and this obviously has both positive and negative or interesting repercussions. When we are all looking at a different version of reality, really interesting things start to happen. It is a privilege to be able to play and experiment with that. And as I said at the beginning, maybe to construct and shape that narrative of what that means in a positive way. We're all crazy about cyberpunk, and it's easy and fun to think about Black Mirror or Blade Runner or whatever, but there are also really interesting positives to that narrative. Spectacles, which is Snap's product, is one small piece of a puzzle that is clearly, obviously, being solved by many others who are here today, and people who are working with these technologies are here today, which is that the camera, which is thinking with you and looking at the world with you and processing it with you, is suddenly on your face looking at the world wherever you go. And that means extra layers. That means extra layers in reality. It means you no longer maybe look the same every single day. This guy is unbelievable. He's in Tokyo, one of the official lens creators. His name is AWE, but he calls himself AWE PNG. Check him out on Twitter. He's phenomenal. It means you get superpowers, obviously, in a fun sense. Full body tracking. Probably ARKit 3. And then you start to think much, much further, and you start thinking about new forms of humans. Bjork's been playing with this concept, obviously, for a few decades now. I play a lot with a tool called Sansar. Sansar is a social VR platform. When you free people from what a human is meant to look like, seriously, the results are pretty surprising. Like, this seems crazy, and yet people on Sansar have avatars that are not that, not that far removed from this crazy. Within the Lens Studio ecosystem, we have a few artists who are playing with this in a really interesting way. Ines Alpha is amazing, absolutely worth checking out. She's really playing with digital makeup, 3D layers of makeup, and changing what we think of as the face. When this becomes your look, but only some people can see it, or maybe different groups of people can see different versions of your look, you get that effect of no one really has access to the same reality. Heidi Klum was wearing this the other day as she was preparing for her Halloween party and tweeted this out. This is a lens by a friend of mine, by Clara Baku, who I mentioned earlier, the artist. Beautiful work. It's reaching that level where people who really have an incredible audience are seeing this passing by their feed. And it certainly becomes a part of the daily discourse. It also opens up possibilities of new non-human life forms. I love this kind of thought process, and I'm really skimming the surface here of topics that are explored more deeply in this event and others. But Micah being an example, at Magic Leap, a virtual human that talks to you and responds to you and sees you, has eye contact with you. Or Fable, which is an amazing company in San Francisco that are building, through storytelling, what they call the next operating system. Or Baby X by Mark Sagar. Again, an incredible project that you will need to dive into if you're interested. You can see Mark there in the bottom left. So he is interfacing with this baby through his webcam. The baby is a neural net. It isn't a 3D model. It doesn't exist. It's responding to him in real time. It has unpredictable emotions. And we can start thinking about new life. This is maybe just kind of a creepy example of something you might see out of your window when you wake up in the morning. But maybe more beautifully, you have these wonderful ideas of creatures, of playful objects made from shaders and of purely procedural life that lives in unpredictable ways. Currently in machines, in boxes, in screens, but soon to be freed when you wear your headset. There are so many topics to discuss, but I find this interesting. So I've gone a pretty big leap from building in Lens Studio, and I think going back to that, what I love about the official lens creator community is they're pushing the boundaries of what we are thinking about AR, what we think AR can be and can do, how we feel we can express ourselves, what ideas we think could work. And they are pushing me to think, how can I express myself spatially? How can I make jokes spatially? How can I consider feelings or thoughts spatially? And obviously all of that starts in very simple, fun, lighthearted ways. The world around us is going to fundamentally change, so let's make it a fun change. Let's make it a change for the better. We should ask ourselves, and you should ask yourself, what kind of future do we want when this technology is becoming a part of our daily life? And you should join us as an OLC and download the program and become a part of that future yourself. Thank you.